Kashmir, Modi, and the passage of time. The other day, BKR, who recently retired from the forest department in Bhopal, called me from Srinagar, excitedly sharing how he couldn't find a hotel room. Everything is booked, even Shikara rides are expensive now. Hard to believe it is the same Kashmir, he told me. A Kashmiri pundit, he along with many others, had to leave his homeland and his house in the 80s to escape fanatics. I do remember Kashmir, but not the one he encountered. When I landed at Srinagar some 27 years back, the tourist reception center near Radio Kashmir Center had only 2 occupants. Myself and a Swedish engineer engaged in a hydropower project. In the late 90s and early 2000s, terror risk jumbled to its brutal peak. During those times, all shops closed their shutters before sunset, creating a curfew-like atmosphere on the streets. With armed forces jawns and mobile bunkers stationed every 50 meters, terrorists had free rein. Places like Lalchau, Pratak Park, Boulevard Road, and Dal Lake resemble Connaught Place of Delhi, are now buzzing with activity even at midnight. Localities are teeming with visitors. A far cry from their previously secluded and fearful past. Dal Lake, now alive with tourists, was eerily empty back then. Houseboat owners sat idle, their shikaras gathering dust. Hotels, which today struggle to accommodate guests, had vacant rooms and dim quarters, not out of choice but necessity. Reporting in those days meant navigating a land where every street carried whispers of an encounter, a blast, or a curfew. The sound of gunfire wasn't shocking. That was I had narrowly escaped death when a Fide Ain, the first in Kashmir, entered an army complex in the Badami Bag cantonment in November 1999. It was in those years that Narendra Modi, then the BJP's General Secretary in charge of Jammu and Kashmir, became a familiar face in Srinagar. Unlike many politicians who saw Kashmir from afar, Modi was there. He wasn't a leader relying on intelligence reports from Delhi. He was on the ground, meeting people, speaking to party workers, understanding the pain firsthand. One of the moments that stayed with me was the Chitty Singhpura massacre in March 2000, when gunmen, disguised in army uniforms, executed 35 Sikhs on the eve of President Bill Clinton's visit to India. The shock was immense, the grief unbearable. Modi was quick to arrive, walking through the village, meeting grieving families, and listening to their pain. His face was not just one of sympathy, but of someone registering everything, every detail, every emotion, every failure of the system that allowed such a tragedy to happen. I remember standing nearby as he spoke to locals, absorbing their anguish. Years passed. Modi became Gujarat's chief minister, then a 3-time Indian prime minister. He had seen its darkest days firsthand, and he knew exactly what needed to be done. The transformation is undeniable. The streets of Srinagar, once silent by nightfall, now echo with footsteps. The hotels, once empty, are overbooked. The shikaras, once still, now cut through Dal Lake, filled with tourists. Fear is no longer the defining emotion of the valley. A few months ago, I had the opportunity to interact with Modi again. Amid discussions on various issues, Kashmir inevitably came up. As we spoke, he recollected those difficult days, particularly the Chitty Singhpura massacre. As a journalist, I have reported on Kashmir's worst days. Today, I heard of its best, and I can't help but think back to those days in the early 2000s, when Modi walked through those streets, understanding, planning, preparing.